us pass on to diseases caused by protozoans. Okay, we have completed diseases caused by bacteria, viruses. We pass on to diseases caused by protozoans. And I hope you recollect pathogens come under different categories: bacteria, virus, protozoa, helminth, etc. Now let us pass on to diseases caused by protozoans. The first disease is malaria. The word malaria has been coined by Maculloch, and he coined it from the word malaria. Mala means bad and area means air. It was actually thought that the mosquitoes breed in it was believed that this disease is caused when there is bad air. Of course, we know that it is not bad air, but it is a disease causing pathogen that causes malaria. But earlier they thought that it is caused due to bad air. So mala and area. Let us see what is the causative organism of this disease. The causative organism of this disease is Plasmodium, and there are 4 different types of Plasmodium. The first type is Plasmodium vivax. Plasmodium vivax. And this Plasmodium vivax is seen in tropical as well as temperate regions, including India. In India also we have Plasmodium vivax. Now this particular pathogen causes the disease known as benign tertian malaria. Benign tertian malaria. Now what is the meaning of benign tertian? The word benign means mild. It is not very fatal. It is very mild. Tertian, the word tertian means there is a typical symptom in malaria where there is recurrent fever. The fever is not sustained but it recurs. And tertian means the fever is recurring every 48 hours. So in a 48-hour duration there is fever, then the fever subsides, then the next 48 hours again the fever appears. So that is the meaning of benign tertian malaria. So Plasmodium vivax causes benign tertian malaria. We pass on to the next causative organism, that is Plasmodium ovale. Now Plasmodium ovale is found in West Africa and South African countries. It is localized to African countries. Now the disease caused by Plasmodium ovale is benign tertian malaria. It's the same type of malaria. It is also called as ovale malaria. It is very mild. It is not at all fatal. Benign tertian. Benign is mild. Tertian is fever recurring every 48 hours. We pass on to the next category of malaria, that is Plasmodium malariae. Plasmodium malariae. And the disease it causes is benign quartan malaria. The word benign, of course you already know, means mild. Quartan means recurrent fever happens every 72 hours. That's the difference between tertian and quartan. Every 72 hours the fever recurs. Now we pass on to the last category, Plasmodium falciparum. Plasmodium falciparum causes the disease malignant tertian malaria. The word malignant means it is quite dangerous. It is fatal. It is not mild. It is quite dangerous. And tertian, of course, the fever is repeated every 48 hours. So this is the only type of Plasmodium which leads to fatality. All the other causes mild fever, mild diseases. All the symptoms are very particular, mild in nature. Let me also tell you that this particular disease has a mode of transmission. The mode of transmission for malaria is the bite of a female Anopheles infected mosquito. The mosquito has to be infected and the bite of an infected female Anopheles mosquito. Now these mosquitoes normally are found during the night, and they have a particular way by which they settle down on the skin. Normally they settle down at an angle. If you have noticed some mosquitoes, they'll sit at a particular angle and they will suck the blood. So the mode of transmission of malaria is through the bite of a female infected Anopheles mosquito. Now, I'm sure all of you know that males normally suck the plant juices. It is not that they do not suck blood, they do, but then when they suck human blood, it causes the death of male mosquitoes. But in female mosquitoes, drinking the human blood is very, very necessary, because there is a particular protein in human beings, in the blood of human beings, which is very essential for the mosquitoes to lay the eggs. So that is the reason why the females depend on human blood for their, to continue their progeny. So female Anopheles mosquito is the vector which transmits the disease from one person to another person. So children, let us now study about the malaria, something more about malaria. The incubation period for this particular disease is 10 to 14 days after infection. So the female mosquito bites you and it takes almost 10 to 14 days for the manifestation of the symptom. Let us see the life cycle, the life history of this particular pathogen. The life cycle is known as digenetic life cycle. Digenetic life cycle means part of the life cycle of Plasmodium occurs in man and the remaining occurs in mosquito, in the female Anopheles mosquito. It is Sir Ronald Ross who actually worked out, or who found out, this wonderful life cycle that partly happens between man as well as mosquito, for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1902. Now let us see what exactly is this life cycle. As far as the life cycle is concerned, there is an asexual phase and a sexual phase for Plasmodium. The asexual phase of the Plasmodium takes place in the mosquito, and hence the mosquito is known as the primary host. The asexual cycle takes place in mosquito and hence it is known as the primary host. Whereas the sexual phase of the pathogen occurs in man and hence man is known as the secondary host. So there is a primary host and a secondary host, and thus the life cycle is known as the digenetic life cycle. Let us first study about the phase, the asexual phase of Plasmodium, which happens in human beings. Now the first step is when an infected Anopheles female mosquito bites a healthy human being. When it bites, you should recollect that the mosquito has the piercing and the sucking mouth part. So it first pierces the skin, and when it pierces the skin, the next step is to suck the blood. But before it sucks the blood, there is a very peculiar thing that happens there. Now normally we have seen that when we prick ourselves with a pin, do we draw out blood? Only when the wound is very deep, it is possible for us to draw out blood. But then it is quite surprising to note that a small insect like a mosquito biting the human being, puncturing the skin and puncturing the wall of the blood capillary. And you must also remember that whenever there is a small wound in our body, it takes only a few minutes to clot. So how does the mosquito ensure that it gets adequate quantity of blood to suck in? Now this is because The mosquito has an anticoagulant in its saliva. So the moment it pierces our skin, ruptures the tiniest of blood capillaries, it is injecting a little bit of saliva so that the wound remains without clotting for a small period of time till it can suck the blood into its digestive system. So that is the reason why the blood does not clot when the mosquito bites. So when this infected mosquito bites a healthy human being and it injects the saliva, along with the saliva, remember that the mosquito is infected. So along with the saliva, it injects in the infective stage of Plasmodium, which is known as the sporozoites. It is called as the sporozoites. The infective form of Plasmodium are the sporozoites. The sporozoites then, through the bloodstream, it reaches the organ called as the liver. It reaches our liver. What happens in the liver is, there is a small cycle which is happening in the liver, which is known as the exoerythrocytic schizogony. Now, why is it called as exoerythrocytic schizogony? The reason is, exo means out, erythrocytic is red blood cell. Exoerythrocytic schizogony means a cycle which happens outside the red blood cell. In this case, it is within the liver cells. The exoerythrocytic schizogony. See, this is a liver cell. So the sporozoites through the bloodstream has reached the liver. Now what happens is, these sporozoites, can you see the tiny small plasmodium here? These are the sporozoites. These sporozoites enter into a liver cell, and then there it attacks the liver cell and grows large in size, and it is now referred as a schizont. This schizont, when it grows in size, it indicates that it is ready to undergo asexual reproduction. And the asexual reproduction which happens in the Plasmodium is multiple fission. Multiple fission. So the schizont, by asexual division, asexual reproduction by multiple fission, develops into a number of merozoites. So I would like to remind you that sporozoites are the infective form of Plasmodium, and merozoites are the form of Plasmodium which are produced during asexual reproduction. So you find that the merozoites are produced in a liver cell, and when there are a large number of merozoites produced during multiple fission, the liver cells rupture and the merozoites are now released out from the liver cells. These merozoites are of two types, the larger merozoites and the smaller merozoites. The larger one continue to attack new liver cells, and thus the cycle continues. That is why we call this as the exoerythrocytic schizogony. The larger merozoites continue with the exoerythrocytic schizogony. What happens to the smaller ones? The smaller ones enter into a red blood cell, and these smaller merozoites undergo three different stages. They first change into a trophozoite. Tropho means to feed. So merozoite is now changing into a trophozoite, and this trophozoite then changes into a ring-shaped structure and then into an amoeboid structure, and all this time it is feeding on the hemoglobin of the red blood cell. And finally, after it has completely destroyed the hemoglobin, the trophozoite, which is now in the amoeboid condition, becomes large in size, and now it is known as a schizont. Just as we had a schizont in the liver cell, we also have a schizont in the red blood cell. The schizont again indicates that it is ready for asexual cycle. Asexual reproduction happens through multiple fission, and hence Once again, a large number of merozoites are produced. Along with the merozoites, the red blood cell ruptures and the hemoglobin, which is already destroyed, is now converted into a toxin which is known as hemozoin. So the red blood cell ruptures. Along with the ruptured red blood cell, hemozoin and merozoites are released. These merozoites once again attack fresh RBC, and therefore the cycle continues within the RBC. So obviously, since it's continuing within RBCs, you can understand that this cycle should be referred as erythrocytic schizogony. So we have an exoerythrocytic schizogony and an erythrocytic schizogony. So two types of schizogonies are happening in the human being where the asexual reproduction is happening. Now, why is the hemozoin produced, or what is the reason for the, what exactly happens when these hemozoin granules are produced? Hemozoin granules are a toxic granule, and this toxic granule, when it is released from the RBC, results in the manifestation of fever. Now, I'm sure you remember that there is recurrent fever, which is a characteristic symptom of malaria. So here, the cause for fever in malaria is due to the production of the toxic hemozoin released from the RBC, and the release of hemozoin is due to the degradation of hemoglobin by the Plasmodium pathogen. So hemozoin is released, fever happens, and these new merozoites continue to attack RBCs. But all the merozoites will not continue to invade RBC and continue the erythrocytic schizogony. Some of them enter into the RBC and they are converted into the male and the female gametocytes. Now, what are gametocytes? They are the precursors for the gametes. So, they are converted into the male and female gametocyte within an RBC. And the formation of the male and female gametocyte indicates the culmination of the asexual phase which is happening in the human being. So, asexual phase begins with the introduction of the sporozoites and the formation of the gametocyte. This whole thing is known as the asexual phase happening in human beings. Now, during this asexual phase, I would like you all to just think, what are the symptoms likely to be manifested in the patient? There are several things happening here during the asexual phase. We saw that there is a liver attack or the exoerythrocytic schizogony. So when the liver cells are destroyed, automatically there is a chance for a particular symptom, and that is jaundice. So there is appearance of jaundice in the patient due to liver destruction. Now here we saw the erythrocytic schizogony, where there is rupture of RBC. When RBC is ruptured and the hemoglobin is also destroyed, what do you think is the corresponding symptom? The corresponding symptom will be anemia. So jaundice, anemia, then hemozoin which is released definitely leads to fever. So these are some of the symptoms associated in human beings due to the Plasmodium attack or due to the symptoms of malaria. Let us see what happens further. We saw that some of the merozoites, the smaller merozoites, enter into the RBC, and there they are converted into the male and female gametocytes. These gametocytes can complete their life cycle only when they enter into another female Anopheles mosquito. So let us see what happens. When a female Anopheles mosquito bites this infected man or infected person, along with the blood, it would be also ingesting in the male and the female gametocytes. So these gametocytes enter into the female Anopheles mosquito's gut or the gastrointestinal tract. Within the gastrointestinal tract, due to the action of the digestive juices, the RPC is destroyed and the male and the female gametocytes are released. They then transform themselves into male and female gametes. So when the male and female gametes come together, automatically there's a chance for them to fuse. And you know that fusion of a male and female gamete is known as fertilization. So fertilization happens within the mosquito's intestine. And what do you think is the product of fertilization? Zygote. Correct. So zygote is formed, and this zygote remains within the wall of the stomach of the mosquito. Shortly, the zygote hatches itself, or it transforms itself into a tiny worm-like structure called as ookinete. This ookinete pierces the wall of the stomach and reaches the outermost wall of the stomach, where it is converted into oocyst, and it remains within the wall of the mosquito stomach for a period of time. After a period of time, the oocyst undergoes asexual reproduction, producing a large number of sporozoites. These sporozoites from the stomach are released into the body cavity, and you will recollect that the body cavity of the mosquito is known as the hemocoel. Through the body cavity or through the hemocoel, the sporozoid finally reach the salivary gland, and it is stored in the salivary gland. From here, when this infected mosquito bites another healthy person, these sporozoids are transmitted into the blood of a new host, and the vector is now transmitting almost 200,000 sporozoid every time it bites a healthy human being. So you must remember that though the mosquito is such a small insect, it is capable of transferring 200,000 sporozoids, which is an infective form of plasmodium, into a fresh host, and thus the life cycle is completed. Let us discuss about the symptoms of malaria. Typical symptoms of malaria are: 1. We saw that the liver is affected, so there is loss of appetite as well as jaundice. When the blood cells are affected, there is anemia, and since the hemozoin toxic granules are released, there is fever. Other than fever, anemia, there is also pain in the joints. Typically speaking, the symptoms are exhibited in a patient in 3 stages, called as the cold stage, hot stage, and the sweating stage. Now in the cold stage, the patient experiences chills and shivering. Okay, so there's chill and shivering. Following that, there is a hot stage. Hot stage corresponds to the release of hemozoin. When the hemozoin is released, there is high fever. The fever is raised to almost 106 degree Fahrenheit. So there is high temperature, and depending upon the nature of the plasmodium, depending upon the variety of plasmodium, we saw that it could either be recurrent fever every 48 hours if it is tertian, or every 72 hours if it is quartan. So whatever be the case, there is recurrent fever caused due to the release of hemozoid. And the third phase is the sweating phase. Now what happens in the sweating phase? The temperature suddenly drops and there is profuse sweating in the patient. So these three stages keeps cycling. So there is a cold phase, hot phase and a sweating phase. So these are the stages, but the symptoms, as I mentioned earlier, are the typical symptoms. Now, as we know, there has been programs as far as India is concerned known as the NMEP. Now, NMEP means National Malaria Eradication Program. Now, this is a program which has been aimed for destroying the vector, namely the mosquito. However, it has not been possible to completely eradicate malaria from India because of the high incidence of mosquito breeding. So it is not still possible, but various techniques have been used to reduce the breeding sites of mosquito so that we can contain the particular disease. So NMEP has not been very successful, but let us see what are the precautions. Precautions definitely revolve around the mode of transmission. And the mode of transmission is a bite of an infected Anopheles female mosquito. So we can reduce the incidence of mosquito bites by eradicating the mosquito. And we have already discussed that. One is the biocontrol method by which freshwater fishes like guppies and gambusias are introduced into the water, which can destroy the mosquito larvae. Another method is spraying insecticides so that the insect as well as the larval forms can be destroyed. Third method is the use of mosquito repellents, which may come as creams or foams or mats, as all of us are very familiar with. Or we can also have methods like putting the mosquito nets on the beds, okay, above our beds, around the beds. Or we can also have the mosquito screen on the windows as well as the doors. So these are some methods which can control the mosquito population. Now, regarding cure, now I don't know how many of you have heard that the bark of a tree called as the cinchona tree, the bark of the cinchona tree produces a chemical which is known as quinine. Okay, so quinine is the medicine which is used for curing malaria. However, we now have chemical components, okay, synthetic drugs known as chloroquine, which can very effectively control malaria in human beings. I am sure you are very familiar with this in the present condition because you may have heard about HCQ, hydrochloroquine, which is used currently as a prophylactic for COVID disease. So this Q stands for chloroquine. So chloroquine is used for treating malaria in human beings. Now I must also remind you that August 29th is observed as World Mosquito Day, and that day is dedicated to control of the mosquito population by clearing out stagnant waters, which is a very favorite site for breeding of mosquitoes. So this gives you an overview about malaria.